Hey, so I don't have H3H3 with me on the podcast or nothing like that. So there's none of that going on. So I don't want to be misleading with the title. I just want to talk to them for a minute. Both very funny people. I love their work and everything they do. It's very interesting to watch someone who has, you know, their wits about them. It's very fun to watch their episodes, especially when they talk about the pet entertainers. Those folks were very funny. The ones that dressed up in the leopard clothing, looks like they were wearing blouses or tablecloths, I would say. Very bohemian-esque. And it's very weird to see that sort of thing going on. You'd think that their activity is somewhat crazy. I mean, I would use that word to describe it. I think it's a waste of money, but hey, to each their own. If you want to entertain your pets that way, then by all means, entertain your pets that way. There's nothing wrong with that. Having any sort of like entertainment for your animals, I guess, would be it's better for that to happen or occur. If you're really going to enjoy yourself, you're going to have to at least include some of your family and maybe some of your friends. But furry friends are not off the mark or off the list for that long. So I do enjoy the furred variety of friends myself from time to time. So my favorite pets for, I would say, for just having pets for the sake of having pets, my favorites would have to be the cat, which is a very, very nice household animal. I don't really particularly care for the litter box idea, but it is better than you can keep them contained, and they can use the facilities like human would. They know where to go to the bathroom in most cases. If your pet doesn't know where to use a litter box, if your cat is not litter box trained, then you're going to have problems, okay? Because the cat crap will be everywhere. My second favorite pet, I know I mentioned two, would have to be the arachnid. I love tarantulas. Now, I know tarantulas are kind of, sort of a different genus or species in the arachnid family, but they still are similar. Most of them don't spin webs, so they're really not typically an arachnid by the behavior or default behavior, I guess, supposed by someone who would think of a spider. But most of tarantulas are depicted in having webs in the movies, especially in the movie Arachnophobia, which tarantulas don't really spin webs. They spin silk. And it's not the same as a standard web you would see between a tree that hangs up to catch insects or prey. Most tarantulas are like humans in their infancy. They're hunter-gatherers. The tarantulas will kill and take the kill to their either hideout or their nest they've constructed from fallen leaves, twigs, sticks, other things like mud, pine straw, that kind of stuff. I witnessed my own South American rosehair tarantula that I had in the past. I witnessed her name is Sarah, building a burrow in her nest inside the cage when we had her. So something else interesting to note about spiders. Arachnids know how to swim. Tarantulas are a scuba diving variety, I think, in some cases, because, well, the one way I discovered this was in the past I've had, as I've said before, a rose-haired, South American rose-haired tarantula. Well, a rose abdomen, thorax, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, thorax. The rose-hair or South American rose-hair tarantula is a very beautiful animal. Very large, I might add. Also, not really close to the biggest in the tarantula family, but not the smallest. But I got to hold her quite a bit, and the tarantula I had before her, I had when I was very young. I had a pink toe. If you guys remember that breed. It's a very, very scary-looking spider, but they're incredibly docile. I mean, you would not think of tarantulas as being docile creatures, but they are. They're hunter-gatherers, like humans were in the beginning. So normal tarantula species don't usually live in open areas. So when you go out into the desert or whatever, you're roaming across Death Valley, throughout our own country, you will find North American tarantulas in the desert. Most of them come out at night. They're very nocturnal animals. So if you have one as a pet in your home, it's good to have the heat lamp on outside the tarantula's habitat during the day. Inside, especially if you have a dark house, to give its circadian rhythm a balance. Because if you're not doing that, then you're robbing the tarantula of its natural serotonin, and you're basically caging it. And when it's in a cage like that, you want to at least have a tank probably about, I would say, 9 or 10 times the size of your spider. So you want to be able to lay the tarantula's width out from the tip of its toes all the way flattened out. So if you have a South American roadster like I did, the tarantula's circumference would be around 7 to 8, maybe 9 inches. That's its complete circumference. The radius would be around 7.5, somewhere in that range, but it can vary depending on your spider's age. So when you have the spider laid out, basically your guesstimated size, the circumference of the spider's width, then you want to lay that out inside the tank at least 2 times in a width fashion, and then go about 10 spider circles, 10 circles, if you will, down the tank itself to have a nice size fish tank for it. You can even build a wired cage. It doesn't have to be a solid glass case like everyone thinks that tarantulas can, spit. Some can, and some fling hairs. It just depends on what kind of breed you have. It also depends on the age of your spider. So when your spider reaches adulthood, it will molt several times in the process of getting to adulthood, especially if you have a young spider or a small one. So it's going to molt several times. When it flips over, don't touch it. It's not dead. Okay, so when it flips over and it's trying to come out of its shell, just leave it alone. Let things naturally occur. The spider is not dead. The tarantulas usually last about between 10 to 20 years, and in some cases they can live up to as long as 30 years. It just depends on the breed. It also depends on the health of the spider, the setup of the tank and or cage or whatever you have to hold it, and your frequency with the circadian rhythm I was talking about. You want to have that light on at least for 8 hours during the day. No more than 8 hours. You want to turn it on at the same time every day. Well, you want to have the daytime period shorter than normal because they are completely nocturnal. Most tarantulas are. And if you have that daytime space for 8 hours, it shortens their time for sleep, and it balances them out to a regulated time of day, kind of similar to when the sun actually rises and when it actually sets, is about an 8-hour time frame. So in that realm of the understanding of circadian rhythms for the spiders, it will make them healthier and more docile. This will keep them out of the, I would say, depressed state. And when they're in a depressed state, they're in a constant mode of fight, or they're in a constant mode of defense. So you're more apt to get bitten if you don't do the circadian rhythm factoring like I've talked about. The same thing to be said about lizards. When you have lizards or any sort of like amphibious life form living in your home, you want to have a lamp that differentiates inside the case day from night, so it keeps the circadian rhythm of the animal intact. And that's true for all animals, but for animals that have lethal defense mechanisms, in some cases like tarantulas or lizards, you do want to impose a circadian rhythm for them so that they have proper sleep patterns, and you can have a more enjoyable pet. The same can be said about spiders, tarantulas especially. Mine in particular love to stick to like a 6-hour day. So I had the heat lamp on top of the case for around 6 hours a day when I had my original pink toe. And she was very temperamental. Never bit me, not one time. I held her pretty much all the time. I had her on me when I was at home. She was sitting on my shoulder or hanging onto my shirt or just hanging out with me. And I would feed her, sometimes once or twice a week. And in some cases, it was every 7 to 8 days. It just depends on the size of your spider and her appetite. or his appetite if you get a male. The real potential here for tarantulas to be dangerous is if you don't feed them often enough or if you feed them too much. If you do it about a 7 to 8 day gap between their feeding periods, they'll understand they're going to have food for a while. They're not going to be held without, and they're not going to have too much. So they don't know what to do with all of it. They run frantic to protect everything if they have too much. So that's a natural instinctual behavior that happens in spiders. They have to, well, the tarantulas especially, because they don't have a way of defending for their habitat naturally. If you live in your natural environment, then you know what I'm talking about. The tarantulas are very territorial, and they're very, very survivalistic. So they have all those things embedded in their DNA, where when you have this pet in your home, you can program the DNA, basically train your spider to be a very docile creature. And you do that with regular feedings of the same thing each time you feed it. Once a month, I gave her a treat. I would give her a little bitty white mouse once a month. That's what I would do. It just generally depended on the breed, and dependent upon the breed, it can be detrimental to you to do anything other to H3H3. Okay, sorry, I'm having to do a code here for my for my banking, so forgive me. But anyway, I wanted to go ahead and continue talking about some other things. So, you know, my favorite pets are obviously cats and tarantulas. So aside from that, H3H3 is one of my favorite channels on YouTube, okay? Because they're the realest people that I have come to know and enjoy through the introduction by my boyfriend to your channel. It was very, very brief, but I kept watching some of your podcasts. You've had Jordan Peterson on. It's a very interesting video. And, you know, if you haven't caught that one, anyone watching this, it's not H3H3. If you haven't watched the video, I do recommend it, because anytime you can have a guest on like Jordan Peterson, that's a super esteemed guest, that's an incredible interview and an opportunity that you did not make a mistake of missing. H3H3. That was awesome. The interview was very good. So short and cut up, it seemed, but still very good. And I do want to try and mention, there were some things also brought up aside from, let's see, aside from H3H3's massively successful YouTube career, I wanted to also speak a little bit to the fact that, well, in today's time, we do have problems raising our youth, and we have an issue with kids, you know, not being allowed to be themselves. So the problem I'm having with that is there are so many people trying to give advice on what they should do for their kids, or how you should raise your children in this world. What you should do if your kid thinks that they might be trans, what you do if your kid thinks they might be gay or straight. I mean, whatever the case may be, the question is, do you even know who you are? That's the real question. As a parent, do you know who you are raising your child? I mean, you don't really understand the journey until you've committed your life to it, becoming who you are on purpose and doing it with intention. And intention to doing so, you learn who you are, and you learn things about yourself that you could then share with the youth to help them understand who they are a little better. And it's not so much like trying to fight for rights for adult people that have made a decision, and then you're going to impose that decision onto a child by saying, well, they should be more like this, or they should be more like that. Now, this person looks gay, this person looks straight. the whole thing between this agenda and what else is going on in our world, we can't really speak to it being an agenda, because that's propaganda. Propagandized agendas don't really move to things that are obvious to people. That they have to dig a little deeper. I'm saying in the sense of your parenting, dig deeper than what you normally would for someone else, because it's not anyone else. It's your child. That's someone you brought into this world, or you have control over their development. If you're not their natural born parent, if you're not, say, related to them in a blood kind of way, if you're just an adopted parent, or even a what you call it, foster parent. There we go. If you're a foster parent, or you've adopted your child, or you have someone else's kid and you're raising them, do what you would do in a situation where you are the child. What would you like to happen for you? Now, that's where I think this movement's coming from, because there are people who are finding out things about themselves they usually don't really like, or they don't want to come to terms to. They're afraid to say anything about it that matters. So they're going to say, well, because I'm this way, because I'm that way, then I'm therefore this way because I'm that way. Yeah, it's not really something that you have to argue about, because the child will learn who they are ultimately through the development of time. And there's a lot of this agenda headed out and going on that's just madness by comparison to any other standard. I don't think that there's anything real about this more than people make it out to be. The problem with that is that everything that we do has a purpose. Everything that we do has meaning. Everything that we do expresses those meanings throughout time. And when you think that there are people who aren't going to pay attention to you, you're probably right. There are some folks who are going to miss the message completely. But I guess it just depends on your perspective on it. Because if you think that there's a real agenda out there in the world to turn your kid into something that he or she may not be, then you have serious problems in the home front. I don't mean that without sincerity. I seriously mean that. That's only because I know what damage, putting things into people's mind can do. I was raised by very open-minded people. My father was very well-adjusted man, not really very articulate, doesn't really speak much to me, or hasn't spoken much about things, but has shown me his way through his actions. And the same with my mother. She was very, very vocal about her teaching, but was very hands-off, allowed me to become the person I am and to decide who that person is on my own. And it is a decision, people, to love or to hate. That is a decision that we all make. And each choice you make, love or hate, out of love or out of hate, each choice you make has an equal outcome to it, whether it's opposite of what you expected or whether the same of or it's congruent with what you expected. It's not an exact science, but the art of choice is not an illusion. It is, you've made all the decisions. There's nothing you can do throughout time that doesn't have a pathway laid out that follows that choice. So most of our lives we spend fighting with other people, deliberating these choices, trying to find out what the decisions are, what our choices are, what direction we wish to take things, and why we have these choices to make in the first place. Why should we be allowed to have these decisions if it is our free will that is called into question? The answer to why should we be allowed is because that's the right that God gave us. We were created under the image of God, out of the image of God, and through the will of God we were made. maybe not as he intended initially. Now, there are some things that happened that occurred in the beginning or infancy of our species that called into question morality, and things that called into question why were we viewed as perfect by God and the angels dismissed? Why were we treated in such a way? Why did we have such a struggle throughout our entire human history? Why are all the historians not telling the truth about what really happened, centuries or eons ago? Why are we hearing stuff like this about society and about the world as it was thousands of years ago from people like Thoth? We have writings that are, you can't get rid of it. It's innocuous. You can't destroy the tablets. They're indestructible through whatever means necessary that or whatever means available by Thoth or Hermes at the time of the creation of the tablets. Those tablets are indestructible. So what we have today is a Bible. What they had centuries ago or eons ago was prophetic words from a teacher that apparently came from a patriarch of a god, the patriarch of a god, of the God, and the matriarch of humanity. Now, that was the union of the spirit and the body. Now, once God breathed life into Adam, that tells you right there what's really going on. Now, the possession of your body by another spirit is definitely possible too, because all of these things are like the air. You breathe it in, it's inside of you, you're connected to everything. There is not a connection in this world that does not exist where you are not applied to it. Now, the reason I say that is because everything in dimensionality, everything in this continuum that we are in currently has always been here and has never not been, because God has been there at the end and at the beginning and is in the middle and is always. So that also means that everything that he created and touched is also eternal, as are we. Our bodies are Gollum, if you will, this avatar made from mud, from stone, from the mire. We are the construction of God's love and his will for us. Now, he made us who we are, made us from clay. Every single one of us was made from the elements that exist here. And that is the same to be said about science. What they talk about being made from stardust is also true, because the stars help make the elements. They help develop, metals. You have clay that's derived from stone and from dirt and from particulate matter of stones and stellar dust. All of those things have accumulated on our planet, and it seems that age has passed, years have passed, or centuries. Well, all of that may have been made at the same time, called into will and into being, called into existence by God himself. And each of those things that we take for granted in our lives, each of those things that we do has a purpose and has an intention along with it. And whether for good or for evil is your choice, what you decide to do with it. Now, the proper approach to this is to have a balance. I know that there are some people out there who talk about New Age as being, evil or devilish or whatever. But the truth is, there's devils everywhere. There's the devil you know and the devil you don't know. Now, most of us tend to stick with the devil we know. Now, that euphemism is meant for no other purpose than to state the sincerity of my meaning, where you're sticking to what you know, what you're used to. An old dog never learns new tricks. So when you stick with what you know, you lose sight of what you could learn, because you think you know everything when you really don't know anything. You barely have scratched the surface of what God really wants for you and for what God really has intended in your life. And it's nothing but love. Now, anyone that misses this message and gets it mixed up with other things, like saying hate is not the only sin, because there's greed, lust, there's sloth, there's envy, there's jealousy, there's murder, there's homosexuality, there's hate, there's blah, blah, blah. There's all of this stuff reached into that permutation of hate. There's several permutations of it, several different ways you can transmute hate into your life. Now, when you break away from what hate controls in you and you start to lead with only love or kindness or gentleness or politeness or agreeableness or whatever you want to use in place of love, it's all the same. It's all good. Okay, so in that sense, when you possess love within your spirit, God is with you. Now, he's never not with you, but your denial of God's love takes you away from him for a moment. Then your acceptance of his love and your understanding of his love, that it knows no boundaries, that there are no walls to be put around it. That means nothing is beyond God's purview. Nothing. That hate is the only sin, because every sin that comes from you, that comes from your body and your will, is out of hate. And doubt comes from hate. Doubt of God is also hating God, because you move away from love into hate. That's exactly where those things take you, is down the realm of sin, good and evil, the knowledge of it, the understanding of the balance and cohesiveness that needs to exist in this world, is the reason people have a hard time today. Because the resonant vibration of our world is changing. The acquisition of knowledge, the enlightenment, the wisdom that comes from a higher frequency of vibration is happening all around us. It began in 2012 as we moved into the age of ascension. Now we're moving further into the age of Aquarius. And as we move along each path, there are things that happen like little lights on a switchboard. They come up at certain times when those levels are ready. So when we hit each level, something happens in society. It's theoretically known as the 100th monkey effect. But forgive the name monkey and think of it as the 100th sentient effect. So once 100 people know something, then it kind of starts to go out to the rest of us in a biological kind of sense. But most of us are disconnected from that biological sense. We're not connected to nature anymore. So we don't interact that way anymore. That's kind of been numbed out of existence, basically, both by poisoning our food and our water and blah, 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 blah. You can go on down the list of all the crap that the elites are doing to us to make us stupid. But the truth is that the higher frequency and vibrations change these things, and it's indeterminate to how far this can go. That there's not really something that is pointed out to where there's an end to all of it. And that's one of the things that Jordan Peterson is talking about. The evolution of the human mind doesn't have a cap. There's not a stop to it. There's a way we can evolve beyond what we are, and there's no cap or no limit to what you can learn. But there is a cap and a limit to what you can learn when you impose yourself into a prison of doubt. Now, what facilitates that is a disagreement with something, or things that don't really line up. That's what I mean, basically. Not really a disagreement like, oh, no, man. No, what really I mean is things don't line up right. There's a disagreement in how things come together. Now, in the layers of reality, we have the observable reality we live in, which is our superficial. It's just around us, periphery and superficial, whatever. It's what we can see, feel, taste, and touch. Those are primary senses, are useful in this dimension, but it is the superficial. And the realm of the supernatural is beneath the superficial layer. Now I say beneath it, but I really mean like kind of here and also not here, where the veil is all that covers it from you. You can't see it because there's a veil there. The problem with this veil, okay, is that it's not there anymore. The problem with this veil is that it's being lifted very slowly but it's coming off people. And the thing that I've noticed from the veil being lifted just a little bit, where you can peek under the curtain, is understanding that just beyond the realm of the superficial, there's a whole different realm just beyond it, where all knowledge and all life is also all death and all of nothingness. It's the same. You can see everything. You can see the nothingness for where it is, and you can define its characteristic and its shape. You can see the everythingness and all that matter is and all that love is. You can see its depth and breadth and its composition and its characteristics. You know where it exists in the universe. Those observations and realizations are what Revelation is all about. Revelation is a metaphorical book, people. Like the rest of the Bible, it's prophetic and metaphorical, meant to teach you in ways through words, to read beneath the words, to read above the words, to read what the words actually mean, to take it literally in some aspects, and to take it figuratively in some aspects. Now, the reason we need discernment is because you need to know when those things are to apply and when to not apply them. It's just like every single thing about Jesus's life was numerological. There were several instances of the appearance of numerology in the realm or life of Jesus. For instance, he died at the age of 33. That was pretty significant to me because that's a very prime number in Freemasonry. And the same thing that exists also happens to be 3 days later that Jesus rose from the grave. Now, we do also see this number of the 3 occurring over and over again in history. Now, I say 3, but I mean 3. I don't want to throw up any symbology here. I'm just using the number 3, and I always do it like that. I'm just how I was taught to count in high school, guys. No symbolism there, okay? Realistically, none. I'm not a Satanist at all, okay? So the moving beyond the numerology aspect of it, going to different people or figures in our history, Thoth was also one that was brought up with a 3 in his life because he was Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes the thrice-born. Also, relative or the reincarnation of Thoth had 2 extra lives, so to speak. Now, we don't really know if reincarnation is an absolute concrete thing that you can remember or something that you can experience. Now, I do believe I have covered a little bit on what happens when you can talk about possession, that our golem can be possessed by other spirits because we're full of nothing but air and light. That's what creates our spirit, and our essence is light, energy. Essence of God, basically, is what gave us our soul. We are divine in our sovereignty as a creation of God, and we possess a spirit or soul that is immortal, that also belongs to God and belongs to us. So the reason we belong to God is not because he owns us or because we're slaves. It's because the souls that we possess as our own are pieces of his. They're parts of his existence because before him there was nothing. When he came into this realm, he spoke being into life by the simple act of speaking it. In the beginning, the Word was God, and the Word was with God. So those words that I'm going to say are very true because the very voice that you have, that you speak, is the same iteration or creation of God, used in the exact same way. Our words have power to them. You have evocation in your voice, and you can invoke things into your speech, and that means something. It's not evil or good. The true existence of it is benign completely. Your application of the words or the voice with its intention is what makes it good or bad, or love or hate. The problem with this distinction in our society right now is people are so focused on hate speech and what that means, and love speech and what that means. Well, beyond the realm of what is and what isn't, hate is just a thing. It's just a piece of humanity, and it's never going to go away. You can't destroy it. You can't get rid of it because it is part of the balance. So the destruction of all evil, the destruction of all damnation, the destruction of all abomination, the destruction of all evil is never going to happen, because hate is always going to exist, because it cannot not exist, because you can neither create nor destroy anything that God has made. You can simply change its arrangement, but it will never be destroyed. You can burn things and turn them into ashes and their constituent parts, but they still exist, because whatever you turned, when you burn wood, you release the energy from the wood, for one thing. You turn its chemical composition from a solid to a gas by burning it through consuming fire, which turns the wood into ash or a cinder. It burns it, and then the smoke that rises, that comes off of it, is filled with particulates, smaller pieces of wood that are disintegrating because of the heat. So the wood itself is now a gas. It was a solid. It goes straight from a solid to a gas because of its composition. By being burned, you've transformed that wood from a solid to a gas. So the same can be said about evil and about darkness and about all of the bad things that exist in life. Now, this is really, really important to understand. When you grasp this concept, then you'll see what I mean. The evil that's contained within you right now is a solid. Okay? It's a solid, immovable object. It's a mountain. It's whatever it is you're trying to get around, a struggle in your life. Whatever it is you're trying to overcome. Having a low-paying job, having a significant other or a spouse that hits you, having an unruly child, or having a job you hate. I don't know. Trying to come to terms with who you are, trying to figure out who you are. Those are all journeys filled from the evil side, because we were blinded at birth by the illusion of choice, of being born into this world. Whether we like it or not, we're given these set of options before we have the chance to know what they really mean and what the outcome of them really is. So once we make the decisions, most of the time they're followed by regret, at least in some small way, so that person then plays that regret out in a role of regression towards someone else or other people in that same group, because the aggression or the hate that you have within you has to go somewhere. You have to turn that solid into a gas, and to get rid of it, you have to let the evil escape you, which is the real embodiment of hell. What hell really is a place where your impurities, your sins, and all of the things you've done in your life, the bad karma, is burned away from you like the wax from a candle. And the candle is still there. The light is still burning very brightly. Hell is not a painful place or a place of punishment. It is a place where evil is melted away. And that is a thing you don't feel when you don't accept the second death, because Jesus knows you. The fact of the cross is not something to remember, people. Forget the cross. What God intended you to remember from that, the takeaway that he intended, was that Jesus was trying to tell you that God loves all of you, and there's not one of you that is left out of that. Not one of you. Anyone. That means everybody, even murderers that have killed 100,000 people. Okay, even Hitler. You see what I'm saying? I know that people don't like to hear that kind of thing, but we're all human. Hitler was a completely misunderstood person. Now, was he a bad person? Did he do bad things? Maybe he did some evil things. And yes, he did some very horrible things when he came to power. And maybe he was an abused kid. Maybe he was a sexually abused kid. Maybe he was a sexually repressed kid. Maybe he was homosexual. Who knows what Hitler truly was, because we don't really know who the man was by the depiction of history that we have been given from our own country, which is not an accurate depiction at all. Because I know some German folks who speak German fluently, And I watched the videos of Hitler giving his speeches, and he was never saying one unkind word during those speeches. He was very, very aggressive in his way of being happy and being in his way of being right and doing what was right for the German people. And I know I'm using a fist there, but that's how he did it. I mean, in some ways, that's a crazy way to look at it, but you don't know until you actually delve into the culture of a certain person before you do some real journalism and real research. Then you understand that maybe the view we've gotten of someone isn't accurate. Now, I do think that, yeah, Hitler was a twisted person. He was a very sick individual. What happened in the gulags and in Nazi Germany back then was terrible. That was a very, very overly and overtly disgusting display of fascism, okay? No, people, it's not a good thing. The Marxist worldview is terrible, okay? I'm just going to go ahead and say it that way. We don't need any more lost life based on that behavior, because it's not conducive to a society that can function properly. Not even this social credit shit that's going on in China right now. That's even a scarier tactic. That's a Christian prophecy unfolding right before you. Now, what we also need to understand is that when Babylon was destroyed and the Tower of Babel was also brought down to rubble behind it, the destruction of that era of our human existence, since then, we've lost our way. We were unified. If you remember the story, we were all unified. We all spoke one language. We all had one way of being. We all had one society together that thrived. We didn't have any real currency that was used for social interaction. It was all for business purposes or for, entrepreneurial use. There was nothing really purposeful or, used for any kind of or degree of purpose with currency at that time, because Atlantis was a complete socialist environment. There were, well, the good part, okay? And when you think of socialism, people get lost in the possibilities of what it could be if there were people doing it properly. The problem with socialism, okay, is that the people that do this, that enact these things, that put these rules into place for socialist rule, they're corrupt people and they're not perfect, okay? No one is. No one is perfect. So all people make mistakes, even me, even you. Everyone makes mistakes. So the proper way to do this, I feel, is if we have a large community that all has equal say in what things are done and how they're portrayed. When we see that there's something going on in our society that doesn't make sense, it isn't working, then we all come together and make a different decision to try and solve the problem. That's the correct and proper way to do things. And I believe the term, actually, it looks like socialism from a historical perspective, but it might have actually been an absolute democracy. Now, there were other civilizations that were like this in the past. The Sumerian government was pretty close to an absolute democracy, and the same can be said about early Roman behavior. There were some instances where it was potentially absolute democracy. Now, they still had Caesar that ultimately was the say-so of most of the end of it. So that was when it moved to a totalitarian society, or more of a totalitarian-esque democracy that looked in ways like totalitarianism. But some of the real issues I have with that is that as the centuries move on, we seem to forget what hate is and what love is. We seem to get too confused. That there are some people who view hateful things as love. Some people that view loving things as hate, and it's not right. And that's the confusion in our society today, is that you're losing sight of what really is and what really isn't. And the truth is, God is only love and has only been ever that. And there is nothing you can do or say that will change my mind, because I know that God is love and love only. And that hate is everything God is not. And if you doubt God, then you hate God. Now, I don't say that in a way that it needs to be done in any sort of way where you have to take these people out or stop them from existing, because my views don't require you to be a Christian. They don't require you to be a God-loving person, a Hindu, or a satanic person, or someone who practices paganism or witchcraft. You don't have to be those people. I don't care, and God doesn't either. The truth is that love is all God cares about. Whatever way you do, whatever thing you do, whatever way you have to come to God is fine by him, as long as it's from a true love perspective, where you don't harm anyone, even if they're wrong. You fight for their right to exist, because those people still need love, and they still need acceptance. They still need to exist because we are their stewards for their own life. We are to let them understand and to learn what hate is and what it can do. And until you let someone complete their journey, how can they ever understand it when you're getting in their way? That's real perspective on this, because I myself have been held back for a long time, not by people, by myself. I know, because I held myself back, and I realized that by holding myself back, I was doing the same thing to others. Now, once you realize you do this, then you can stop it. You can change the way your direction in life is. You can move past your mistake and learn from it. There's nothing wrong with making a mistake. There's nothing wrong with failure. The only thing wrong with any of that is if you don't learn from it. The only thing wrong with anything that we do is if we don't learn who God is through what we've experienced. Love is all he cares about, and the only message worth carrying on. Because if you love anyone or anything about yourself or who you are, then none of the sins that you talk about are obvious. None of them matter, because they don't come from a place of hate. They come from a place of love. Now, there are some questions as to morality, sure, but I also say that to each their own. Judge not, lest you be judged. Because God gave us all free will, made us all a certain way, designed us this way on purpose. So even if someone changes who they are throughout their life, it does not make them good or bad, or you any more divine or sinister for judging them. It simply makes you wrong in the fact that you think you can impose your will on someone else when you yourself are not God. God has given us all free will and has never impeded upon that will since the times he's done it, and has regretted it when he destroyed the world. When the flood occurred, he said he would never do that again. Why did he say he would never do that again? Because he realizes that that was a mistake. Ending life, period, for whatever reason, is a mistake, because the person doesn't have a chance to learn from their mistakes. The person doesn't have a chance to defend themselves, to learn from what they've done, or repent or return from that, a changed or different person. Now, the best way I know to handle this is not to imprison the folks. It's not to murder them like they murdered someone else. Although that is, I suppose, fulfilling for some people in the form of revenge. But vengeance belongs to God. Vengeance is only God's, and he will avenge you. You can attest to that. The Bible is a pretty clear indicator of God's vengeance and of God's love. But your mistake is not understanding what God's love can truly do, and the power of who he is and why he is. It has nothing to do with why you are or who you are. It has everything to do with who you can become and how you can become that. Each of us has our own path, and we all have to understand that we're not the same, yet we are. We're all human, so we all match in our genome and our DNA mostly. People don't talk about the similarities of human DNA. They only point out the differences. The problem is that they try to push a message of differentiation or division upon us. Now, why is that? Men are so different from women. Why is that? Who cares why we're different? The similarities are that we're freaking human. We all are one species. We all came from somewhere we don't understand. We all came here innocently, not knowing the past, not knowing the future, only the present, which is the only thing underneath the tree you need to be cared about, that you need to care about is the present, because it's always a gift for you. Each moment is a gift, and God intended it to be that way. Why would he not allow us to see the future or the past as we would see the present? Because it would be too simple for us to learn things and too chaotic to pick through and understand what things really mean. So experiencing life chronologically, as we do, from one point to the other in a linear fashion, then we can learn in real time, moment to moment, bit by bit, what experience is. God sees it all at once, existing simultaneously at the same time. So our existence is predicated on his understanding of who we are and ours of his, of who he is. Now, the reason that things have changed throughout time is because there are also debilitating learning things that God himself is learning about himself and about us. To experience himself experientially, to learn who he is through experience, and to learn who we are by experience. We took from the tree of good and evil early. We learned too early in our lives, in our existence, about what that means. The eating from the tree of love and hate. We took from the fruit of knowledge that we weren't supposed to at an age we weren't supposed to. We weren't ready for it. That was the problem. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, if God let that happen, or if it wasn't one of those moments where Satan was just being a deceiver again. I mean, now you can say, surely that, God's intention was not to lead us into our own understanding, but to understand what God's intention was for our life, what God's intention is for our life. And the intention there is to love each one of us individually and together, for us to love ourselves and our neighbor, and to treat no one different than you would treat yourself. Because if you do that, then you wouldn't kill anyone, because you obviously shouldn't want to kill yourself. And if you do, you obviously have some issues you need to work through. Okay, you need to talk to somebody, because your life is precious. You should not waste it. The same thing can be said about loving other people, because all sin comes from hate. If you steal from someone else, you hate them, because you're taking from them what God gave them. You're taking from them what they got through either innocent means or ill means. Either way, you're completing the cycle of hate by doing it yourself. To end it, to break the chain, to break away from the slavery, you need to understand that love is all that matters and hate is all sin. And to break away from hate is the only way you're going to take the shackles off your body, to take the chains off you, to break free from this bondage that has been given to us and imposed upon us from birth. That's damnation. And damnation is being eternally ignorant from what really is an eternally true thing in our lives that we all have to be understanding, and at least know that truth rests in the simple. And the simplistic nature of my message is the same as Jesus' message and the same as God's message. Love is all he wants to spread to you. Love is all that he has for you. Nothing you can do can ever change that. Nothing. The only thing that you have to know is that this life is given to you as a gift, a free one for you to have. You didn't have to pay for it. You got it for free. You think God would waste anything like that on you that's that important if you didn't deserve it? I fail to understand how anyone can think they don't deserve to live. I don't get it. Even through the hardest point of my life, those points of my life where I thought that, man, it would just be easier if I were not here. I've had several moments like that. Several. But the real point is not following through with it. You can learn from your mistake and learn from that happenstance in your life, because ending it would be so foolish, because you don't get to see what God has on the other side of that door for you, what the light can bring from you, because God loves you and never wants you to do anything like that, because he didn't waste time on you for that. He brought himself to the table, drew a sketch of you, put you together, designed you, picked a point of your life, and even pulled part of himself out, threw it in that mire, and it asked you how you wanted to live your life, what you wanted to experience. And you and him worked together, planned things out, and he popped you in a human, popped you into a mama. And then you come out the matrix, come out of the womb as the beginning of your DNA, living your life experientially as you and he planned it out before you came. Now, there are some other views mixed in that as well, but that's just conglomerations of theory from different spiritualities that I've come to understand and know through some things that I think I have a unique perspective on it. But the reason I have a unique perspective is because I haven't been led through all of this through an indoctrinated view. I don't think that Christianity is the most accurate religion, but it is also one that carries with it a lot of truth. The same can be said about the Quran. The same can be said about the Bhagavad Gita. The same can be said about Buddha, about Vishnu, about Brahma. The same can be said about the Quetzalcoatl. The same thing can be said about anything in our history. All of the religions we've ever portrayed throughout human society, we've all come from the same origin. We all have had the same creator, and we all live on the same planet. Why do you think in the Wiccan or the witchcraft field or the pagan field, okay, they say as above, so below, as below, so above, all the freaking time? It's because it's true. God loves you so much, he gave you his absolution of love in physical form, and you can see it. You can walk around in it every day. It's all around you. The problem with people today is they don't see that. They ignore that. They're blind to who God is. And what God is all around you. The trees that are outside in the grass, the leaves that fell from the trees, the piles of these leaves, or the mulch from the trees, all of that is God. Everything in this world, in this existence, all of it was created by him. It came into being through his voice and his intention. All of it was put here for us as his love. And those of us that lead with nothing but hate in our hearts are throwing the balance off. Now, they still need to exist, people. I don't want to stress this to you. Very importantly, there is no such thing as a good or bad person, okay? It does not exist. There's only a loving or hateful person. Now, those two extremes do exist in our potential life, because you can see those things in people when you look at them. You can tell that that person's hateful. You can tell that person's loving based on their expression and body language. It's psychological. It's also pseudo-psychological. It's also superficial. It's also ethereal. It's also concrete. It's also bondage. The reason I say that it's bondage is because you're then trying to overcomplicate, convolute God's theory through your own methods and trying to understand something that God has already laid out for you. There are two things in life you must understand are the most important thing: love and hate. Those two things the world does not exist without, because there is some form of it all around you. These computers we use to talk through each other, or to talk to each other and to post things like what I'm doing now, these computers are made out of love and hate. Okay, someone loves to do their job, so they build computers, or a robot did it, has no emotion. Okay, but someone who programmed that computer, who made that robot, loved what they are doing, or had loved what they did. They created a robot to make computers, an assembly line. They love their job, so they designed a robot to do that. Or they hate their job and the robot doesn't do such a real good job or whatever, and it's a poorly made laptop. But still, there's still intention from human hands that made all of this that we see in front of us, every bit of it. And the intention that from that person is put into the object is how you get possessed objects or whatever. Because with enough evil intention, people, things can get real very quickly. Now, I also want to speak to the fact that what you're looking at when you look at a computer screen is a scrying mirror, okay? It's a black screen for a reason, folks, okay? The same goes for your cell phone, also a scrying mirror. Now, these things, when you talk to scrying mirrors, they're not good or bad, okay? They exist in the pagan and witchcraft realms to call forth spirits as conjugation, or let's see, you can conjure spirits through a scrying mirror. You can invoke them. You can evoke spirits. You can do things through a scrying mirror that you would do with a Ouija board. It's the same thing. Okay, it's no different. The only difference is the user interface changes and the outcome is different, very different, because the scrying mirror is not a portal in which the spirit can travel through. They can locate you using the scrying mirror because they can see your face and all around you. Now, the same can be said about them importing cameras into these computers because it creates an actual digital scrying mirror where the super evil intelligence that runs everything can see everyone at the same time and sap your energy through your visual cortex. They can see your aura through it, and this entity knows where you are, can then leech off your energy from where you were located. Now, that's a little theoretical there, but you're going to believe a scientist over me. You're going to believe someone who can point out frequency over me when they're trying to use objects also made by man, also constructed to design a certain result, also constructed to get a certain result from a reading of a use of that object. And the scientists themselves don't even really know what they're doing. They just understand how to operate the machinery and follow the algorithmic code that was designed to develop it and to develop that result. It's not real science. I would say it's misleading. Okay, it's not accurate science. I would say it's scientific in the sense that it's modern science, but it's also misleading because they hide the truth in plain sight. Now, this is pretty obvious about Mike Tyson's story if you want to see another realm or physicality of truth in plain sight. You want to see it, watch the interviews with Don King during the video. Very creepy stuff, and the guy even talks about the true nature of the elite and the evil in our country, in our world, through some of the words he speaks in certain interviews during the era or the controversy surrounding Tyson was hitting ahead, basically right before the Holyfield stuff. But really and truthfully, folks, the reason I say that it's not accurate science is because who is Lucifer? What is Lucifer? The light bearer was his designation. Also, keeper of knowledge, wisdom, science, keeper of all of these things that was described in such a way to use his knowledge to trick men, to enslave us. And he's doing quite a good job because not only do I have a computer in my life now, fortunately, I also have a cell phone, which is also a scrying mirror, which I have with that social media, and now maybe my job in the future could be a blogger, or a vlogger, I should say, a YouTuber, I hope. But the existence of these objects in our lives is evidence, one of, first being that there's witchcraft involved at the highest levels, okay, because they're scrying mirrors. And two, most of your electronics are black. Now, the reason that is because that's the only part or wavelength of light they don't give off. So when you understand that your eyes can see color that the object is not giving off, that means that the table itself, when you're looking at it, isn't brown, because that's the only color that it isn't, because that's the color you see. You see what isn't there, but you don't see what is there, because the color it reflects is the only color missing from its spectrum. So you witness that in physicality. You put on different lenses, you can see the color of the object truthfully from its perspective. If it has any heat, that's kind of the explanation I'm going for. It's a glowing object. Everything we put life into, electricity through, everything that we touch, taste, feel, has a glow to it that we can't see. It's through the EM spectrum, the electromagnetic wave spectrum, or EMF frequency, or EMF area. So the electromagnetic frequency waves, okay, EMF waves and EMF resonance or whatever, those things are very real because everything that has a frequency also has a resonance and a vibration that goes along with that frequency resonance, and you can match it. Now, when they do those things, they create methods in which to use their magic, also given to them by Lucifer himself, the knowledge of it, carried to humanity through the aid of Satan to control the masses and turn people away from God. Now, the reason they do this is to prove or disprove any kind of theory. The very thing that Satan is the best at doing is to tricking you into believe he doesn't exist, that hell isn't real. But the truth of the matter is, people, hell isn't a place that you're going, okay? You're already there. Look around you. That this place can be Eden and hell at the same time. That's a Jewish view, but it's also an accurate one, okay? Now, when you look at around you, everything that you can see, feel, taste, and touch is also everything that ever was, ever has been, or ever will be. It's never changing. There's another viewpoint that comes from, also from the Rastafarian perspective. There's nothing new under the sun. It's all been here. It's always been here, and it always will be here. It will never change. The only thing that will change is you. Now, the best thing to do to understand that, or knowing that the only thing that changes is you, is to understand that you have the perfect will and chance to move forward in your walk with God, and understand that his journey for you is only one of love, that nothing else matters. Hate you can cast to the wayside, because hate is not useful, okay? Because one, it brings everyone else down around you, and two, it does nothing but throw the balance off even further of your karma, and the longer you'll have to spend in hell, okay? Just saying. To learn your struggle, to come beyond it, to learn from your mistakes, that's divine, okay? To forgive is also divine. To love completely without condition is divine. To give your neighbor things that you would have given to you, to do things for your friends and your loved ones as you would want them to do for you, to spread the love that you want, you'll get it back. Now, those who perpetuate hate, that want to argue about this with me or anyone else, I would say, well, you're wasting your time, because I know the truth. Any permutation you can spit out at me that's another conglomerate of hate, it doesn't matter. I know all sin comes from hate. So I know the origin of sin. I know where it came from. It all comes from hate. If you get that out of your life, then you can start living a life that's sinless. If you do only things out of love, nothing you do can be wrong or viewed as hateful or sinful in the eyes of God. Now, that's true. The true being that lives for love and only that is on a walk with Jesus constantly, and is aware of that walk, not just being carried through the sand of your hard times by Jesus, but you're walking together now as brothers, as friends. You can even visit your loved ones or those who have left this world, or gone from this existence or superficiality. They're still with us, all around us, because now they're energy. They're evanescent in a way, because their consciousness floats from here to there, and it's everywhere at the same time, but they're all around us and they're nowhere. Because in our superficial realm, we can't be with them yet, but that's the truth of it. So I went over a lot of different things and different topics, and a bunch of different topics in this video. So I do want to say that I hope you guys have a great day, and I do love every one of you. So I hope you guys have a great one. And again, shout out to H3H3 for keeping it real, man. I really appreciate the videos. Very fun. I hope you guys have a great one. And thanks again.